Are you set? No. He's asking if you need that.
All right, here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2. Hey, we're back. We're back up here on the stage at the Heartland Cafe every Saturday morning. Another edition of Live from the Heartland. And this is the first time we've ever had our friend Clem Balanoff here.
No, it isn't. Clem was here before.
No. I don't think so.
No.
Oh.
Katie's always saying she thinks the whole world has been on this stage.
I do. I feel like
it feels
that.
like that. Clem,
I'm sorry, Clem. I thought you were
we've
here.
certainly been in the Heartland many times.
You know, it is. We're coming up on Labor Day, and that was one of the reasons we wanted to get you here, because you're from a long line of labor and political activists here in Chicago, out of the southeast side. And
great name, the Balanoff name.
You've been working hard for the people as long as I've known you've been around. And so today we want to maybe you give a few comments on Labor Day, but we also want to get at the Illinois pension question and how it affects labor unions and what is going on. And maybe you can help clarify it for us in the next 18 minutes.
There we go. Well, we'll certainly try, you know.
So,
Talk about labor?
yeah, well, you come from a labor family, as Michael said, and I do too. Your folks really broke ground. Your mom, is it your mom or your aunt or
I mean, my mother's Miriam.
Miriam,
but my
yeah.
father, Clem, and my uncle Jim were people that in 1937 were at the Memorial Day Massacre, actually, on the southeast side of Chicago.
Wow.
You know, helping build the United Steelworkers of America way back then.
Yeah.
And now, interestingly, all these years later, my cousin is head of the steelworkers in the region, Jimmy Robinson, interestingly.
Oh, my goodness.
You know, so your family
way.
were steelworkers union people.
Yeah.
And you were just telling us that as a 10-year-old, you were dragged along with the steelworker family to the March on Washington.
Well, with my father, actually, not my mother. My mother stayed back a couple of brother and sister.
I saw Obama giving a lot of, when he gave a talk at the 50-year memorial the other day, he talked about the steelworkers. And, you know, I'm learning more about the March on Washington now. I had been there as a 20-year-old, but I don't remember. I just remember King's speech and lots of people.
Got it.
But the steelworkers played a real good role in that.
Well, I think that many unions certainly played a role back then. And, you know, when you look at when you think about Labor Day, you have to think about what unions have meant in this country. It's things like, you know, like the minimum wage. It's workplace safety, health care, you know, pensions, which we'll talk about in a little bit, the 8-hour day, just improving workers, you know, working conditions, family and medical leave, and job protections. There are just so many things that the trade union movement, labor movement has brought to this country, because what the key to their strength certainly is in their numbers. And unfortunately, you know, when we look at Labor Day this year, the numbers are dwindling.
Well, that was what I was going to ask you, because before we talk about the pensions, which is on everyone in Illinois' mind, what do you think of what's the outlook for labor? We see massive, or not massive, but certainly widespread marches around people working in fast food chains. Yeah. We see a new wave of organizing going on in Mississippi around, you know, with auto workers. There's a lot of labor activity seeming to come to the fore. Do you think the labor movement is going to grow, or do you think it's going to continue to be attacked and undermined?
Well, I certainly hope so, that it's going to grow. I mean, like right now, I think about 11.3, 11.4% of the workforce in this country is members of a union, are organized. The majority of that is in the public sector more and more.
Yeah, SEIU, AFSCME.
Sure, SEIU, you know, my cousin Tom, who's head of SEIU in Illinois, and AFSCME, public sector unions. And I certainly hope it's going to grow. I mean, when we look at things like immigration reform, we look at things like the living wage campaigns. These are certain things that people should be able to relate to. One of the problems for the trade union is they have to figure out how to get young people much more actively involved. And I think that when we look at the living wage campaign, that certainly is one of the doorways to this, you know, to the campaign. And I suggest that because many young people get out of college and they basically don't have any jobs.
Yeah.
And even if they do have a job, oftentimes it's a very dead-end job. And so I think that there are certainly avenues. But then on the other side, we also have to understand there are 24 states in this country that are currently right-to-work states.
Right.
Right-to-work for less states, as I call them. And, you know, you have limitations on the collective bargaining rights of public sector employees, like in Wisconsin with Scott Walker. So, you know, so I think that really it depends. I mean, it depends. I mean, look, people have to understand that as I said earlier, that their strength is in numbers and they have to organize to be able to protect their own self, their people's best interest. So,
oddly enough, the minimum wage movement right now is the most, has the most potential, because we have mega employers like Walmart who are shaving hours so that they don't have to give health care.
I had a plan.
Absolutely.
I suggest, there's a lot of people that are cutting back. I'm sorry, Kate. Cutting
step
back
right in.
their workforce hours, the individual, to 29 hours a week, so that they won't have to get Obamacare. So
Yeah, I was saying.
This is not necessarily advocating this, but it's just a thought I had about the boycott of the 29ers. And those would be companies that
Starbucks.
that are cutting back the people's hours to under 30 hours.
well, it's also what some employers are doing, are talking about cutting out insurance, health insurance for your
Yeah.
spouse.
Exactly.
They say because that's costing them tremendous amounts of money, and these are the kind of things. These are cutting back benefits, as opposed to, like certainly every country in the world, just about besides the United States, industrialized country, has universal health care, and the vast majority of them are actually much better. They're single payer sort of
Right,
systems.
right.
And people that complain about government-run health insurance, we have Medicare. Everybody loves it. It's something that's been around for I don't know how many years, but it certainly has worked.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that healthcare, you were talking about Obama earlier, certainly didn't go anywhere near far enough.
Well, it's about priorities.
Right.
And our priority is clearly the military in this country. That gets
Absolutely.
half of the budget or so, and the rest of us be damned, pretty much. But I do think, as a person who ran a small business for all these years,
Right.
and who stood up and said, yes, I'm for raising the minimum wage, even as other people are
They
going,
kicked her out of the Junior Chamber of Commerce.
never tried. He's lying, outright lying.
You know what's interesting about that, Katie? When I was in the legislature way back a long time ago,
Yeah.
the first bill I put in was House Bill 494. And I remember this was made in 1988 and 89, and it was to raise the minimum wage in Illinois. Mm-hmm. And, it didn't pass at the time, of course, but certainly when you raise the standard of living of like minimum wage worker, the standard of living of everybody in this country will be, raised. And I think
Everyone is
that's something that
lifted.
people have to recognize.
Yeah.
All right, we've got 10 minutes left, and we're going to talk about pensions.
All right.
We need a little, you give us a little background of how we
Sure.
got in this mess, and then maybe how we might get out of it. I'm always amazed that I don't hear anyone in the legislature talking about taxing the wealthy and having a different
go.
kind of income tax structure. We have
Yeah.
a flat tax
Yeah.
in this thing that has led to this problem.
Right. Well, it's been years and years and years and years in coming, and as Michael just said, absolutely the solution to the pension crisis is not cutting benefits for those that have paid into the system all of their lives. When we talk about that, and I brought a couple of things here just so I don't forget the actual numbers, but in the state employees retirement system, the average retiree is 69 years old and has worked between 25 and 30 years, and what's their great pension for all of this? $27,000 a year. Okay? The teachers' retirement system, again, their average retirement of a teacher is 69 years old, and they've spent 29 years in the system.
And they don't get Social Security.
And neither one of these gets Social Security. That is correct.
Right.
And they make $42,000 in the county where I worked for many years, and I was a trustee on the pension board. The average county retiree makes $32,000 a year, and the average retiree in the forest preserve is $28,000 a year. And when they talk about this great cost of living increase that we get, this 3%, it's just astronomical. Since 1975, when they put in the cost of living increases in Social Security, the average increase has been 4.17%. And we're getting this astronomical 3%. I think it's absolutely outrageous how we treat workers in this country.
Yeah.
And, you're correct. It does take a number of things. We have to understand that in Illinois we have a flat tax. We have to have a graduated income tax. Those that can afford to pay more should be paying their share. The rich should be paying much more than people who don't have any money.
Anybody in the legislature calling for a graduate income tax?
Well, it's interesting you ask that, because when people fill out questionnaires in the legislature for the independent voters of Illinois and other groupings, there's always a question about the graduate income tax, and not everybody, but many people check the box, yes. I would venture to say, with supermajorities of Democrats in both the House and the Senate, and a governor who's a Democrat, that there are more than 60 votes in the House. There are more than 60 legislators who have said that they're for a graduated tax, and more than 30 senators, as has the governor. So it should be real simple to pass it. But they're going to give you excuses. Well, that's not quite the graduation I want, or it's a little too tough on the guys on the top, or it doesn't go far enough on the bottom. There'll be a million excuses rather than any real action. And I mean, I think that's right. And there are other things too, though. It's corporate giveaways.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's not only, you know, the Mercantile Exchange. We gave them a big break in 1989. I mean, I tell people, I really tell people I'm very proud of this. The legislature gave Sears $61 million to move from Chicago to Hoffman Estates, and I was the only legislator in Illinois at the time that spoke out against that.
You were state senator?
I was state representative at the time.
State rep.
You know, I mean, I think it's corporate welfare. We've got to end this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, instead of, we don't talk about ending big tax breaks for corporate America or starting tax rich, we always talk about, well, which programs are we going to cut? How are we getting enough money for education or mental health care or, you know, job training and a variety of other things that we certainly so badly need?
Well, the gap, which Dennis also referred to, the gap in America is, I would maintain, something that makes most Americans very uncomfortable. The fact that we are no longer appearing to be a society that cares for the workers, takes care of the workers, has something to be proud of in our products, in our communities.
Yeah.
I think the slide into slipshod work or crummy food products and calling that a diet, all of those tendencies chip away at the pride and happiness that Americans once felt. I think I was about 1 year old, and I remember people feeling that. And ever since then, it's been sliding downhill in terms of the rich and the poor being further apart.
Right.
There used to be a time when even the wealthy gave their share, or even were inclined to say, let's build a library.
Well, the wealthy still give their share. It's just unfortunate it's to the politicians.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to, in order for there to be real change, I think that, you know, in this country, I think one of the things that we're going to need is we have to change what it takes to get elected.
Amen.
Let's lay out some
Yeah,
stuff.
talk
You got,
about that
you
for a
got about
second.
8 minutes, 7 minutes.
No, I don't know. I
Give
mean-
us a plan.
Well,
What do you want us to do?
I don't exactly have a plan on that one. No, but I think it's
minutes.
important
Some
that,
ideas for the
you know,
plan.
well, I think that it's important that we, you know, look, right now, there's no doubt that it's not, you don't run for office anymore. You run to be able to be the best fundraiser, basically.
Yep.
And I mean, that's really what it's about. It
It's
doesn't,
so
you know, it's
true.
not about members of Congress spend hours and hours a day dialing for dollars. They don't spend it, you know, working and on talking with constituents. And I mean,
getting
it's-
creative solutions to our
Right.
many problems.
well, if we have a creative solution, the problem is that business industry, big businesses say, well, wait a minute, the real rich, well, you know, it's going to cut profits, or it's going to be a little too difficult, we can't do it right now, you know, or it involves change, and they really are pretty resistant to change.
You
know,
think?
and, well, corporate America certainly is, because they
Yeah.
know if they make change, that could mean less for them.
Yeah.
And so, no, I think that there's, you know, so I think that's one of the things in policy that we really have got to figure out, whatever it is, whether it's public funding or whatever, and people aren't going to support public funding at this point in time, I don't believe, you know, but I certainly think that certainly is one of the things in the right direction.
Yeah. And the other question that begs always is, when is enough? When do you have enough to the people in power and the people with wealth who are not sharing it and who
You know-
seem to be getting ever more stingy? It's like, is there an enough point? And the answer is no.
I always wonder about that, because you know, like they keep the rich just keep on amassing more and more and more and more wealth. And
Yeah.
they can't spend it.
And what are you
It's not even-
doing
there's
with
no
it?
possibility of spending it.
Right.
And
Right.
it's pretty outrageous. And yet they're you know, they just can't do anything to be able to help out working men and women and the poor, and certainly. Yeah.
Well, we're disappointed in the leaders of both houses of the legislature. We got our ups and downs around the governor. Do you see any people in the Illinois legislature that we look to for any semblance of direction on this matter?
You know, I'm not real sure.
That'd be a no.
You know, I mean, it's like really one of the things that's very unfortunate about the Illinois legislature is, yes, there are some of them that show hope periodically, I think. You know, there's a number
Yeah.
that show hope periodically. But in the legislature, it is really very tightly controlled. Legislation doesn't just, you know, it doesn't happen because it's right or because it's good. It happens because the speaker allows it to happen.
Yep.
I couldn't believe at the Democratic thing at the state fair last year. They had a Democratic Party thing. Man, that was a meeting with a gavel and a half. Boom, bam. No one got to say a word.
Well, and this year I think we canceled the day
Yeah.
because we didn't want to have any protest. Last year it was when AFSCME was down there, and they were saying, hey, you know what? You gave us a contract. We want to have you honor your contract. You know, that goes back to me to pensions, because one of the things in Illinois that's very important to understand is the pensions of public sector employees are guaranteed in the Illinois Constitution. Back in 1970, the pensions were only funded at about 40%, and there was a pension crisis. And when they framed the new Constitution, there were a number of votes taken to be able to water down the one that the provision that guaranteed the rights of retirees and guaranteed a pension. And what happened is 3 or 4 times they voted down efforts to allow future legislatures to change this, because they were understood that these were benefits that had been earned. And that's why AFSCME and SEIU and others are fighting so hard right now.
Yeah.
And,
well,
you know,
the other thing, as we have repeated a number of times when we talk about pensions here, the people who don't work for the state need to understand is these folks do not have Social Security.
Right.
So they have not,
Right.
that's part of the deal.
Oh, yeah.
And which doesn't, for the most part, at its amounts now, cover people's total needs when they retire. Anyway, however, people need to understand that when you take away the pension that they've been paying into for all these years,
Right.
you are taking away all of their retirement.
Right, no, and I mean, and people do pay a significant amount of money into their pensions. I mean, 8, 9, 10% of their wages go into, directly into pensions. They do not collect Social Security.
Right.
County workers do not collect Social Security. State workers do not.
A lot of these unions and workers think that the courts are on their side. What's your take on that?
Well, it's interesting about that. Whenever they put it, they're talking about pensions right now. They're taking the judges out of the pension bill, and they always say, well, we can't put them in the bill because they're going to rule on it.
Very
well,
interesting.
I mean, it's very interesting. It is very interesting. But I will tell you this: I've talked to many legislators, both former and current. I've talked to 3 or 4 pension lawyers, including like the lawyer for the Cook County Pension Fund, where I was a member of the board, and I've talked to probably 20, 25 judges, and 3 of them are appellate court judges, and every single one of them, to a person, not 9 out of 10 or 99 out of 100 or 999 out of 1,000, say that they believe that because that it is a contract and it is not something that like you can break. So I do have some and they believe that if you are retired, they cannot touch your benefits. That's their book. That every one of them said this to me. As I said, not 99 out of 100. So I really do think that in this case there is some hope in the judiciary, because there's also, in their case, there's also fear that if they were to do these things, then the legislature could come back and do it to them. And
Sure.
the legislative pensions are involved in this too, so.
Such lofty ideals our government is based on and running on these days.
Let's have a big round of applause for Clem Balanoff. Let's also have a round of applause for Michael McCarty, for Dennis Cunningham.
And Vincent DeCorio.
You've been listening to the Live from the Heartland Show. We're here every Saturday morning on WLUW 88.7, around the world at WLUW.org, and we do film these episodes, and they are on youtube.com/heartlandmedia and on CAN TV. So we're going to have a good show next week. We don't know who's on yet, but we got a lot of people waiting in the wings. And this is Michael James along with Katie Hogan.
Thanks, Michael.
We want to thank everybody who makes this show possible. We've got Grant and Hal here on this end. Down on the other end, we got Rocio.
We want to say get well, Mary. And thank you, Paul and Mary. And have a great vacation and holiday, safe holiday, everybody.
So do good in the world, because the world needs all the good that you do. And don't forget, all power to the people.
Michael, it's interesting.
You're listening to 88.7 WLUW, Chicago Sound Alliance, broadcasting from...